January to Nagaro. As Roland said, I'm an Agile coach. As many of you, I don't know how many Agile coaches do we have in the room? Great.
Like certified or?
I have there's a lot of certified stuff on my, on your thing, but well, we talk about there is a cartoon about certification somewhere as well. It's not in this set deck, but yes, I have my own views on when you start to write SPC, SPA, SPA, after etc. And you've never actually done an Agile project yet.
Exactly.
So, guys, this is an experiment. You are welcome to my little mini bit of Scrum. You are my first iteration, okay? I haven't done this yet, okay? Some people like to really time their presentations. They know exactly how long they're going to take and what's coming up and what they're going to say when. I don't know what I'm going to say yet, okay? I have a few ideas in my head. Basically, I'm going to throw topics up. I'm going to tell you stories about what happened that inspired the comic that came after that, and then this is going to be a bit of a break, but then I'll let you guys read the comic. So one of the most important things is if and when I start speaking too quickly, please just raise your hand if something's unclear in the comic. Just ask questions. Basically, you can ask questions in the middle of this all the time. There is no great message to take with you at the end. There will be no exam. This is really, just get involved. It's communicate. Yes, I am sharing information, or I will be sharing information.
What letters can we put after our name when we've attended this?
ADS, Agile Drill Sergeant. So this is called Full Metal Agile, which really was a wordplay on Full Metal Jacket, okay, which was the Vietnam films, which actually I got it wrong because, yeah, Full Metal Agile, Full Metal Jacket was where the guy who died recently, actually, the drill sergeant, makes this appearance at the start with Private Joker and all that kind of stuff, and he really screams at himself, "Hey, you can suck a ball through a hose," and all that kind of stuff. And the genesis for the Agile Drill Sergeant was basically happened as usual in my case over a pint or two of Guinness. And with my friends, we used to talk about something called, people have an epiphany, we're seeing the light, okay? We have what we call the epiphany pint. It's about between pint 2 and 3, normally where the good ideas come. It's very important to document your good ideas at that point. Send yourself an SMS, write a note, do something, because trust me, after pint 6 and the next morning, you won't remember. You'll just know, "Ah, it was a great idea last night. What was it?" I haven't a clue, what was it? This has happened to us. So after that, we have the great idea, write it down, and then continue drinking. So the Agile Drill Sergeant basically came from frustrations of an Agile coach, particularly as a coach. Now, we just heard about whether you're a manager or not, right? But if you go in with the coaching, really in the coaching sort of like, I want these guys to come up with their own ideas and they should implement this and not me come in and say, I've been doing this for about 10 years. You need to start, if we don't get an integration server up and running inside the first 2 sprints, we're fucked. So then I want to get coverage at 60%. We need to start, that's not how you want to do it. You want them to realize it might be a good idea if the code quality increased and they were doing a bit more code coverage. But every now and again you get a bit frustrated, particularly if you've been sent in, and you will see that the people who don't come off quite well from my cartoons are mostly management. Getting ironic given the last talk. But the managers that I've met would be to 90%, if not more, they are managers in the sense of administrators and not really leaders. And Agile Routes needs leaders, okay? And I don't see enough leaders, unfortunately. So this is where the frustration came from. So you're sitting there, got a few beers and go, "Hey, Agile Drill Sergeant, I just want to be able to go up and whack people behind the head and say, write that code now." So it's like the inner bit of me that was kind of wanted to get out. Great idea, great ideas after 2 or 3 pints are 2 a penny, okay? Every time we go out, we have great ideas. I know Philip's not here, but we came up with loads of ideas. Minimal viable moderation came up last night. Philip worked out 3 sentences and then on the fly, just make up the rest. So the problem is I've been drawing since I was about 8 or 9 comics, or trying to draw comics since I was about 8 or 9, okay? And this is giving a bit away. In the last 40 years, I haven't managed to finish a comic, ever. Okay? I've got about 8 or 9 pages in big A3 stuff, and it just ground to a halt. So, super idea, ain't gonna happen. And I'm sitting there going, this is kind of a pity, I quite enjoy, what can you draw about? And I thought, well, I actually know something about Agile, so I could, in theory, draw something about that, okay? We have this idea of an Agile Drill Sergeant, and it could be quite therapeutic to get some stuff out there that annoys me. So I thought, and here I am, a fucking hypocrite. I go into the companies and say, focus, small pieces of work, get it done, accept the results, deliver it, improve it. But I don't do that with my art. No, art's got to be perfect, right? You can't half-finish a picture and just put it out there, right? So I set myself a challenge, and I said, right, I'm going to knock out 12 cartoons over 3 months, and I'm going to time box myself on drawing the cartoons. So I got a 3-hour time box to create a cartoon. And whatever it looks like at the end of the 3 hours, that's the cartoon that gets published. Live with imperfection, okay? And trust me, there's certain things I like to be perfectionist, other things my desk is not perfection, but certain things I like to do right, okay? So I really genuinely set out to create these cartoons using all these ideas that are principles that I've been using with other people, and I'm really going to do this. 3-hour time box. I am not happy with all of these cartoons. I have gone back and changed the wording in the cartoons in the second iteration. I have gone back and colored them in. I've changed them afterwards. But I published them on the night, so to speak. It was over a Sunday night or something like that, after about 3 hours, and put them up. Okay? So I really, really, really used agile thinking to get this done. So much so that if I've got, this is why I want to be able, I can see my computer actually, can't I? You can give me my computer, probably, can't you? Because it's all unattached. Sorry, it's not attached to it. You can use it. Ta-da! Except it's not sharing. I'll just see if I can get it to share because I'm not seeing anything of it. It doesn't take it as a separate screen, does it not? See if I can extend. I do extend. And let's go back to here. Just see. The reason is I would quite like to see what's coming next. It would help me. So if I do this, yes. Nope. Let's just try. If not, I'm just going to make this up on the fly again. It obviously it just casts the screen. That's going to make things a bit more difficult. I have to remember what I was hoping to see it up here. Right, so what I actually used, I broke it down into absolutely idiot-proof steps, okay, in a Trello board. Is it going to be 3 frames, 1 frame, or 4 frames? Okay? What style font am I going to use? Pay the bill to get the website up and going. I broke it down like that and put a backlog together. And I said, if I don't split it up like this, I'll just look at the whole thing and say, I'm never going to get this done. So I literally split it up, okay? And then at the top, this is where this is where the cartoons themselves started coming in. But there was stuff like the banner wasn't working. Minimal viable comic. My website looks shite. Okay, it's awful. Friends have promised they're going to improve it for me because it's like WordPress and you can do that. It's black on white. But for me, it's not an essential part of the product. People aren't going to go to my website and say, oh, do you like his background image? It's beautiful. They're there to look at the comics. So that hasn't been important yet. I haven't had the time. So it's been shoved down, it's in the backlog somewhere, but it's still sitting down at the bottom. Improve the style. And the initial cartoon, it's one of the first ones I did, okay, was I drew one. This never even made it into this didn't even make it into the collection because I thought too many people wouldn't know that the motto of the Marines is, see, this is why I didn't make it. Semper Fidelis.
Yeah.
So I thought it'd be cool if they all had to shout Semper Agilis. But as most people don't recognize Semper Fidelis, there's not much point putting that in the cartoon. So, we were, as you can see, if you look at what he looks like there, and if you look at a few other things, these were my own comments to myself about what I thought worked or didn't work. Right? You had to, this is your prototype, so to speak. Throw it together. And that was just playing around with it and trying to get something to work like that. So that I really did try and do this. And there is the creative phase or something like that. So when you're doing this, obviously you don't start with finished comics. Okay, you've got your idea phase. So I mean, initially I thought it might be a box like that. I have the greatest, who knows Geek and Poke? Oh guys, Geek and Poke are brilliant. Geek and Poke, he does this, he's a German guy. If we see how we're doing time-wise at the end, I'll show you, you can find out where he's really good. And you probably recognize the cartoons because they hang up in where developers are. And one of them is this like, his definition of continuous deployment was, I've been trying to fucking deploy this for 5 days and it still doesn't work. And he gets it done in one box. And I really, guys who can push a cartoon into one box, I love that. I'm like, wow, how do you do that? I can't do that. Didn't work for me. I tried it, but I'm not my style. And you play around with it, you know, you gotta, the sketches normally look quite different. The problem is, the sketches are quite quick. Trying to make that then look like a proper comic is always a bit of a pain in the ass, to be honest. I would love to get away with the sketches, but they don't travel too well. And sometimes when you're drawing, literally, I just drew this guy and the character was there, okay? It was like, okay, I have this character now. And that just came from doodling, right? See, the coach that comes up later on with the yellow shirt and shorts and the hippie and, you know, peace, love, and systemic. He also just came out of it, I think. And there's various ideas. Not everything gets into it. Not everything comes into a comic or not. You got to play around with ideas and stuff like that. So that was outside my time box normally. But once I had an idea, it was time boxed to deliver a cartoon. Okay, so what you'll notice, or when I went to prepare this and went and looked back to the comics, I realized that what I said to you guys at the start, this desire to go and like hit people and really get this frustration out of my system, there's a lot of punching in the early comics, okay? The early comics are really quite comic-y, okay? Purely from an artistic point of view, I think I put more effort into the drawing than I did later on. But they come out swinging is quite literally like that, because in the early cartoons, he really does come out swinging. So he got introduced, and one of the other things that happened, which I noticed, was that the order of the comics when I published them versus, you know, whether they would tell a story was completely wrong. So some of this has been reordered, but it actually makes a bit of sense. But what we have here is the next one is that quite often, and this very much reflects, I suppose I should make clear that my job as an Agile coach is very often I'm working for an external company. I'm being brought into companies. I'm not working as an internal coach, I'm an external coach, which very often means I don't have a lot of say over what job I have to take. And quite often with management, it's very much a case of come in here, agilize those teams, Kanbanize that team. And you know, and it's like not really, the team's not coming to you and say, hey, we need some help, we'd love to do this. Manager is going to get that done now, okay? So this will be reflected quite often in what I say. And that comes out here with the introduction of the Agile Drill Sergeant, which this is where we're going to come to some of the breaks, but I'll give you a chance to read the cartoon. This is where he makes his first impression. That's the Twitter picture, I guess. You know, I will never, I've been involved with a lot of people who seem to think that you can shove the agility down to the team and I don't need to change. And over the years, this is really a red flag to me. I don't want to work with people, with managers who don't realize that the change starts with them. Okay? And this is something that's become a red rag. So here goes one of my, after this, we'll see what happens, but as an example of where the frustration comes out, how many of you hold retros? How many of you enjoy holding retros? Yeah, it's good, then you're doing a good job with them. Retros can be great. My experience with a lot of developers is at the start, it's kind of hard work to get them to appreciate that a retro is a sensible thing to do. Okay? There are general reactions to these things. Quite often, it's quite a strong reaction of, this is a waste of time. We're just talking. You know, and I go, yeah, talking's also developing software. It's about communication. We just had communication yesterday. It's all about communication. It's all about a common idea, a common way of thinking. And somebody, I'm not sure who said it, but I like the idea. Somebody said a retro is sort of like you practice being a team without having to deliver something. Who's done a code retreat? Anyone ever been in a code retreat? Yes, sir. Also done a code retreat? 6 different blocks or so. You sit down with the coding exercise you cannot finish. You practice the art of coding without being able to finish the code. So you really concentrate on getting it right, whether it's tested and design, whatever you wanted to look at, in this case, just in development. And I think a retro is a bit like that. This is how we get the team to work together as a team without saying, and you have to finish this sprint goal and get that done. But what I normally see at retros is roughly this. Whoops. You will see self-portraits. There are about 8 to 10 or 12 people in here who exist, roughly. They don't look one-to-one like they do. I have a bit of a personal aversion to use, this comes out as well. I've experienced a lot of Scrum Masters that seem to be totally caught up in the touchy-feely side of it. Yes, that is important, but if we don't deliver a product, you can forget your touchy-feely. That's my sort of take on this. And some people are inclined to get a little bit lost, which will come up. Okay, so this is what I would often see in a retro. Particularly if you're external, sometimes you're in a position, it's okay, you can go in and you have these guys roughly where you need them. You say, right, everybody put your laptops down, we're going to get going on this. Or you can do this. I have wanted to do this so often. I really have. The frustration of some retros. I mean, guys, I've had great retros and I've had great teams that really use the retro. But you've got other things that they expect you to draw it out of them, and you really think, you really want to go in there and say, right, I'm tired of doing the touchy-feely shit, and now we're just going to get down to business. Okay, so that's what I mean. He was a little bit, he's kind of brutal at the start. He mellows with age. In the course of the year, he hits less people. He does want to, though, every now and again. So, one of the things, whacking people is an agile value. That was the message. This is really annoying that I can't see what the next comic is. It's supposed to give me a little picture in the top right. So, when I was, one of the things that happened was that a friend of mine basically got fired from as a Scrum Master because the team velocity hadn't increased over time. Okay, that was basically why he got fired. And my friend was quite upset about this. And he was talking to the departmental head and the Brightlight and stuff, and the departmental head said to him, you know, that increasing velocity is an agile principle. Now, I can understand how Jeff Sutherland's to blame for an awful lot with getting twice the work done in half the time. That's the definition of a Taylorism. Think about his statement, getting twice the work done in half the time. That's Taylorism. Okay, he said getting twice the value in half the time. I can live with that, that's good. Now we're talking about something important. And twice the work done in half the time is on a factory floor. So, now, and managers pick up on this. And they get the idea, and he's always the one, we're going to increase velocity by 400%. And I thought, oh, you guys better estimate low at the start. We all know how to play that game. Oh yeah, we're now delivering 80 points a sprint. So this is what came up, and this was also a reaction to that because we felt this was a learning curve for us as external coaches about what is our job. What is the expectation? Something we hadn't done before. We were quite happy to go in and the company would say, we need 100 hours of coaching, or 100 days of coaching. We'd say, yeah, cool. I'll be busy for the next 6 months. Excellent. Okay? We never went and said, what differences do you expect to see at the end of this? How are you going to know this has been a successful amount of coaching? Okay? We didn't do that at the time. And this is one of the things that we learned quite painfully, and that came up last year. We held a talk a bit about that, and it's also what breaks your agile heart. At what point do they refuse to do things, or they don't do stuff, and you say, I can't work here anymore. You're not taking this seriously. Yeah, there's quite a bit of pain in here. It's not just being hit, okay? So, this is what this one's about. Okay. And you can see I worked a lot to get that right, okay? Followed by so I wish you could beat the agile values into people. You haven't had much success with it though. But the idea that there are a lot of, I mean, anyone who works in this area, you know how many misconceptions there are. I've got to the point where I don't even want to hear the word Agile, Kanban, or Scrum anymore. I'd like to talk about how can we improve? What would an improvement be? Where are you now? What could we improve? Can we use lots of different Agile things to help you improve? Yes. Do we have to do Scrum by the book? No. So where are you? Where do you want to get to? What would the next step be? Much more sort of like, what's your problem? Do you want to change? What's it allowed to cost? If you have a change, what's this going to cost you? I did this recently. I was at they wanted a coach full-time for 2 teams or something like that, and I said, so what's this allowed to cost you? And he said, you mean how much you cost a day? And I said, no, your productivity is going to sink. We're going to change things. It's not going to work for a while. The results aren't going to be what you expect. How much pain are you going to put up with before you say, we're not doing this after all? That's the cost. And most people want it to happen, you know, beside everything else happening. Yeah, we're going to do an agile transition, and everybody in the team gets like 4 hours to work on their agile transition bit, and the rest is just like it used to be. Great, it's going to be really successful. Problem is, when you work for an external company, you don't get to choose these things too often. So this was just like a running joke amongst us at the time, that philosophy is an agile principle. This guy will make appearances quite regularly. That's the only thing running through it. And this was another one. I hope you can. You don't really even need to be able to read it, but you can. The environment that you're trying to do Agile in decides everything, really. There's only so far you're going to get. And I love it when they say we're bringing Agile in, and they still want all their constraints, their quality gates, their systems set up the way it is. They want to keep that stuff going. There's another in-joke here, and the only person who didn't get it is Ian. Ian also knows what a tool is. A tool in British English is a derogatory word for a, help me out here, Ian, with an unlikable person,
It's.
watch it your own video.
I'll use the polite term then, penis.
Yeah, bit of a prick. Okay, so if you read this, bearing in mind that, I'm trying to think of what the word would be in German, actually.
No, I can't help you there.
Well, yeah, in theory I could, but if you think about it, we all probably know a lot of process tools, okay? Idiots who are in love with their processes, and you are not getting past that process. You've also got to ask yourself very often, how far can we go in this company if they're not prepared to change these things? If management isn't prepared to move these processes, people have a strong position, it could just fill up. Sometimes it's not even worth starting, to be honest. So like I said, at the very start, the Agile Drill Sergeant was throwing his fists around quite a bit. felt quite therapeutic for me. So. Right, tree huggers. This is sort of like a personal bugbear, and please don't get too upset if you tend to do this. Or do. I would go to Scrum meetings and stuff like that, and sometimes you'd think it was like a group therapy session that people were having as a retro and stuff like that, the whole thing. And I was like kind of going, no, it's not actually why we're doing this. And that's the cartoon after this. But you had this kind of feeling that it was this like a group therapy thing going on the whole time. You're kind of going, actually we're software engineers trying to develop a project. I'm not, I know this is, you've got to bear in mind when you do a comic, okay, things are deliberately over the top, right? So I'll have stuff in here which I don't actually believe, but it's a funny, if I think the joke's funny, it just might get in there. So I have a kind of reaction to this when it goes too far, when I have the feeling that they're losing sight of why we're really doing Agile, and they're getting more caught up in the coaching side. It's a bit like, well then go and coach, just coach, but get out of the role of what you're doing as a Scrum Master. And this was inspired by someone who came to the coach camp about 2 years ago. Inadvertently, this is what I mean, this is where the ideas come from, okay? I've seen retros and met people who are inclined to work like this. Okay, and you hear about people holding retros, like pirate-themed retros, and they do, they bring in dancing acrobats or something like that. It's a stick for your own back. Okay, you gotta watch it. If you're doing a retro every 2 weeks, you don't want to be doing something special every time. You need to get a retro mat, Cornelia Baldo. Yeah, super. Retro mat is just so cool. It's like all these different things you can do in a retro, and it randomizes it, and you can just pick stuff out. And I regularly, if I need inspiration, retros for me tend to swing between, quite often, if I'm working closely with the team, quite often I'll have, going against my coaching principles, I have an idea in my head, which, what I'd like the team to have decided by themselves at the end of the retro, okay? Here's what I'd like you to decide. And you try and, as best you can as a coach, then you're asking very leading questions, okay? Sometimes you'll go into that retro, and the retro will take a different direction. It's quite interesting that something else is obviously hurting them more than you thought was the case, okay? There are other cases, though, where people really don't like the retros a lot, and it can be quite difficult. And people are inclined to, try to, my books, a little bit overcompensate for that, and then try to make it interesting. It'd be better to have a discussion as to why the retros aren't really working for them. But anyway, this is my reaction to going a little bit over the top. This was originally in black and white. That's one of the ones that got colored in afterwards. So here's my view about why we're doing Agile, which is quite simple. We're doing it because we think it's the best method to get a project done, or to get a product done. Okay, when I'm explaining in courses and stuff like that, and saying, who's the Scrum Master? And I said, the Scrum Master believes. Scrum Master's a believer, my books. He believes that if we do Scrum right, something cool is going to come out at the end. But it's not his job to make sure the content of what's being done is perfect. He's going to trust people to do that. But he believes if I keep the Scrum process up and running, and if we keep it really, really working as Scrum, then I believe that what comes out at the end is going to be good. Okay? I always see him as a sort of, he's got to be a true believer. If he's kind of half-arsed about it, it might not run that well. So this is my view about why we're doing Agile, and I feel this gets lost sometimes. That was the cartoon before. Never forget your job is to deliver working software. Sometimes that can fall under the wheels of the bus. You'll also notice, just purely for me, this is the first time this sort of like, it's actually a picture from, the originals here was Kitchener in the First World War. It was a general in the British Army, and it's Uncle Sam in America. The pictures are similar, but they're a bit different if you take a look at it. And that was that idea of that kind of, you know, this is shit to draw, okay? I hate this kind of foreshortening crap. You can spend 3 hours just doing that. It's useful to have a reference for it when you want to get it done. But I just, sometimes I felt that sometimes you can lose your way. Not very often, but that was just, and I think it's important to remember that's what we're here for. If you don't deliver the project and don't deliver the product, then we don't need to do this. By the way, feel free to interrupt with this question if you can't read stuff or it doesn't make any sense. Tell me. One of the biggest challenges I have at all is I invariably seem to deal with a lot of groups. And I deal with managers who expect their groups to act like teams because they're called a team. And it really, it's painful because I believe in the power of teams. I've worked in really cool Scrum teams. I know what a team is. Okay, we all know what a team is. We've all been on a team at some point, okay? And it doesn't have to be at work. It can be at home, or when I play music with friends and stuff like that, and we all actually stop playing the tune at the same time. It feels like we're in a team, okay? We depend on each other. A lot of people that I have to work with, particularly on the Kanban side of things, are very much groups. And if I have a preference, you're always caught in this thing between how much is the organization prepared to change, and how much they're not prepared to change, and where do you start with them, okay? But ideally, I mean, I'm a fan of getting real teams together, and I've had problems. The biggest problems have really come where management's expectations of a group is that they should behave like a team. The other one would be when they say, yeah, and I want self-organizing, but they don't put down the boundaries for the self-organization. They just say, I want them to be self-organizing. You say, yeah, based on what? What are they allowed to decide? What's your decision matrix? What do you guys do? Decide, what do they decide? How much power are you going to give them? What are their boundaries for this? And this comes back to this came back to this original thing which we showed you a moment ago. But out of this frustration, it was like, your team needs you. This is the original one, obviously, is your country needs you, was the original posters. And this might have less resonance over here, but I think if you're in the UK or the States, you'll know that kind of picture. And I really had a strong feeling that one of my greatest frustrations was trying to explain to managers, you can't expect team behavior. Now, I had a really nice experience with a Scrum team that I felt wasn't quite pulling together. There's a couple of externals in it, there's internals, and there's an external testing company. And you had this feeling it wasn't really working as a team. So I did a retro with them, and threw away all the usual stuff I did in the retro, and I asked them to say, okay, define it, what defines a team? What defines a group? Okay? And on a scale of 0 to 10, or 1 to 10, where 1's a group and 10's a team, where are you guys at the moment? Okay. I also asked them in an anonymous vote, so I flipped the chart around and said, okay, go on, do you want to be a team? Because I said, my job's easier if you don't want to be a team. I know a lot easier if you don't want to be a team. But you want to be a team or not? Do you actually, I'm not going to make you, I'm not going to stand you so you have to be a team. You can't do that. Do you want to be a team? The answer was overwhelming yes, which surprised me. I quite liked to have 1 or 2 no's, just to make it better. And then we said, okay, so where are you roughly? And they said, we're about a 5 or 6 based on the team scale. And then I said, okay, everybody for yourself. What could we do that would bring us 1 step closer to being a team? Surprise, it was communication and talking. But even though you've got them in the same floor of a building, even pretty much within spitting distance and stuff, you go into the dailies and you realize they're only talking to each other in the dailies. So we really tried to get them talking more. But it was their decision to talk more and stuff like that. You could reflect on it in the next retro and say, did we talk more or not? So it's building teams and helping to build teams. great in Scrum, but my experience with Kanban is very often people are specialized. Management isn't really interested in building up a second person and stuff like that. They leave the specialities the way they are. You may as well put up a proto Kanban board with swim lanes per person sometimes. So that was where this came from. Waterfall. You know,
I hope you're not encroaching on my territory now.
one cartoon and that's it. Ian and myself had a really good discussion yesterday about if you go back and look at the papers that introduced waterfall, okay? It's not, okay, all I'm going to say is it's not what you might think. Go take a look at those papers. Ian will elucidate this more tomorrow. What I wanted to say was, and what interested me, I was at a company, an insurance company, and they explained to me their process, okay? What they did, and it was a whole bunch of, I did 9 phases or 10 phases, it had an equivalent number of quality gates and stuff like that. And what was really clear was this was the ITs. You know this kind of problem where you've got the main company and then they've made a daughter company that's the IT company, okay? Which is basically supposed to work like an electricity company, just deliver electricity, okay? And they get treated like slaves, basically. Just come on, chuck out the code, what's the problem? And so this was their defense. Waterfall and all these steps was their defense against getting the blame. It was a perfectly logical reaction to the situation they found themselves in. So one of the things that I've, over the years, is I hope, developed a much greater empathy for where people actually are in an organization, what the organization has done to them, and why they work the way they do. Well, it's a reaction to their environment, okay? And the question is how much of that environment can be changed and how much can they change with it. But something like the waterfall, a classical waterfall process, is often there. It's a defense mechanism in many cases. It was really clear when they explained this to us, this was their way of making sure they didn't have somebody come in like the Agile Drill Sergeant and whack them over the head at the end of the project and say, you got it wrong. Okay? Interestingly enough, their KPIs were based on whether they did the project in budget and on time. Okay, and they were allowed to rebase the project every time there was a change from the customer. Soupy. And you could be plus minus 15% at the end. Their KPIs were really good, and I said, so what's your pain? What's driving this change? Oh, our customers aren't happy. And I said, so do you have customer satisfaction or delivering value as a KPI? Oh, no, because that's not what we're the IT department, we just do this bit. So it wasn't a great surprise. So anyway, that led to this one. This literally happened in a meeting. I'm sitting beside Thomas, my friend, and he goes, and I went to him and said, Thomas, how long does it take to get like a 2-month project through this thing? And he said, nobody knows. It's never happened. You know, and they literally had, as the thing went on, and you've got idea, demand, confusion, frustration, delusion, fear, anger, blame, despair, exhaustion, burnout. The coloring is equivalent, but they had, you know, they had roles for everything. They had completely, not just siloed in the sense of we have analysis, development, and test, and ops. They'd siloed everything inside the silos. The silos had silos inside the silos, and the blame game, I mean, we know this, you see it all the time. This automatically leads to blame games. It's just predestined to go on. But that was their streamlined project delivery. So, a few words about Scrum. If I can, if it's allowed, and if the company allows it, it's my favorite, obviously. It is my favorite because you can really see things move. I've had really, really good experiences with Scrum. I've had also some god-awful experiences with Scrum. But as we said recently, the problem was my god-awful experiences weren't really with Scrum. They were with Scrum Bot or anything but Scrum, or we just called it Scrum. The worst case of Scrum in a company that I had was they said, oh, we do Scrum. I said, great, so what does it do? Oh, we have a 3-week iteration. That's good, okay, it's fine. So, you got review meetings. No. You got retros. No, we don't do that either. You got stand-ups. Yeah, once a week normally, yeah. And so what about sprint planning and stuff like that? Well, every 3 weeks, the business analysts assign all the tasks to the developers. And that was their version of Scrum. And they were calling it Scrum, and they had a Scrum Master. And you can pull your hair out when you hear this stuff. And but I really sort of spent about 10 years, I suppose, doing it at this stage. And it really, I've seen the results of when it works well. And that's one of the problems. I said this to one of my teams. I said, bad news, guys, you've been infected. And I said, what do you mean you've been infected? I said, that's it. You've been in a Scrum project that works. You will never go back to waterfall again. You've seen that it can work. And this was a really nice project because we were much closer to the customer than I've been in many other projects, and we were really getting good feedback. And we were getting praised by management who were going, hey, good job, guys. And this was unheard of. And it was really cool. So I used to play rugby. You can see that by looking at me. Okay? And it did strike me at one point, I've done pictures before about this. Everybody in this scrum actually has a role. Okay? You've got a tight head prop, hooker, blindside prop, you've got the blindside flanker, the 2 second rows, the outside, the open side flanker, and you've got the number 8. Okay? And they all have a role to play. And they normally have different body shapes. Okay? So the 3 guys at the front are inclined to be wider than they're tall. Okay? And in preference, they shouldn't have necks. Okay? And these guys are like, like that, okay? These 2 guys are normally, these are the guys who, about 6'5", 2 meters, over 2 meters, built like tanks. They're the tallest people on the pitch normally, those 2 guys in there. They're the engine heads, they push, right? They're normally the strongest. These guys need to be pretty snappy and fast and pretty strongly built at the same time, though, because they're the ones who often peel off and do a lot of the running with the ball, and this guy as well, although he tends to be a bit taller. And I thought that, this is the way Scrum team works, and a little bit, this is the way you line up in a waterfall. Okay? The irony is that's how the backs are normally standing on a rugby pitch. So you got forwards and backs. The backs actually normally standing like that. But you have this kind of chain. Okay? That chain can never hold up to a Scrum team. And go watch a couple of clips of rugby and you'll see that happening. You'll see these guys in a rolling maul, and they will just, people get thrown away to the side like that. So that was just basically coming from my own experience. I'm playing a bit of rugby myself. And scrum down is what the referee says when the 2 teams go down and go together like that. It's called scrum down. Okay, it doesn't mean scrum has collapsed. And here's a few things. Actually, I know Jira is an unavoidable evil, so to speak, in many cases, but actually, now, I have to admit, because I normally find myself in an environment that is a KPI, classical, waterfall, orange-colored, reinventing organization, okay? Keep Jira, it keeps people happy, okay? They want to have their documentation, they want to have the history, they want their reporting, just do it. We always, virtually invariably, have physical scrum boards, but in the background you got Jira ticking over to keep managers happy. And while I was doing this and we were getting the reports out of it, I began to notice certain patterns. I have a few good teams, and they're really not bad, but this happens a lot. Now this one here, this happens a fair bit. They get it done, but everything's at the last minute, and we still haven't. Their testers are external, and they're with the team, but they're external, and I still think it's one of the reasons we don't get better testing done faster. I love this. Let's change the content of the sprint in the middle, and you wonder why the stories go over 4 sprints before they're finished. Happens quite a bit. This is a beautiful warning sign that you may as well just stop now. And I've never actually seen that in reality.
I have.
Have you? Cool. But I mean, I've seen pretty close.
Once
But-
I left the team.
What I have seen is, I've seen it drop off, go down here, and then go flat line across, and then drop back down again. So like, we hit the midpoint. And another one that came out when I was dealing with this stuff, and it used to frustrate the pants off me. The guys would continue, you know this, so these are the, you'll see in a moment, these are the optimistic guys. They never hit more than 45 points, but they keep putting 60 to 70 points in the sprint. And you go, at which point do you going to realize you don't, that was because, and then we get back to nice point about what I love about Kanban, you do trends, you don't do specific incidents. But in Scrum, you can, that was because this story had that, and we waited on a test server and stuff like that, okay? So I thought maybe you can tell something about the personality of the team based on their planned velocities versus their actual velocities, okay? And I've got guys, and they've got 5 sprints, and they're like, guys, you don't deliver more than 40. And at one point, nah, Philip, we're not doing that.
You gave me a word yesterday, But that's maybe your problem, but no excuse. It's still your word.
Commitment.
Watch me run out of time here. So, I've had finally one of the developers, thanks be to God, somebody said, she just literally said, stop at the planning, that's it, we're not doing more than 40 points. And they started to deliver the 40 points. And you know, we took it as a mission, one of the objectives was clean the board. Have an empty board at the end of the sprint for a change. So that worked quite well in the end. And in the ideal case, you're getting them down towards this. But this, I've seen this as well. So, yeah, what's not agile? And this is the one I think it is, it's the one about the, yeah. So, I said earlier about you hear, oh, we're doing Scrum, we're doing Agile, and stuff like that, and then it turns out that, Philip, can you go out of the room again?
It's blind, I'm sorry.
So what would bug me is, you know, people would think they're doing Agile, okay, and they'll tell you they're doing Agile, and they'll tell they are Agile, and they're doing Scrum and stuff like that, and then you ask, just this is a really basic questions you can ask, and pretty soon you know whether they're being, you know, whether there's actually anything happening or not. And that was based on this experience of finding out that, no, quite often it's not really that, which leads to this. Yeah?
It reminds me of a great story from a friend of mine. He led the Agile transformation in a large insurance company in the States. And this first Agile team, he was told that there was one person that he could only have half of. And he just looked at the manager who told him that he'd only have half of this person. He said, well, great, can I have the half with the brain?
We've probably all had this. I mean, it's one of the hardest things to explain to them and say, right, you want to build a team, and the guy's only 25%, 50% on the team. How are they supposed to balance? And quite often the developers themselves, or the testers, are left to choose. They have to prioritize themselves quite often. And it's a recipe for disaster, particularly when the expectations are that you're going to get Scrum or get Agile. That's the worst bit. That's the bit that really, really makes it difficult, because that's what they expect. Oh yeah, this is sometimes there's stuff I put in there which maybe I don't really believe, but I thought it might be funny at the time. This isn't fair, okay?
Oh, yes, it is.
Now, when I first I started working with Kanban about 4 years ago, and when I first came there, and they said, oh, we're doing stand-ups, and we're doing retros, and we're doing cadences, and we're doing all this kind of stuff, so why the fuck don't you just do Scrum, okay? And I've worked quite a bit with, Kanban is quite different to Scrum, but at the time my reaction was, it just sounds like you don't have the balls to do Scrum, you know, because you can kind of get around certain corners when you're doing that. I actually have a lot of time for Kanban, and particularly in teams and groups where you're just not going to get the team isn't dedicated to the one topic. They have support work, they have operations going on, they have new development, and they're caught between lots of different things. Kanban's the answer. Definitely can't do Scrum with them. So it's an answer to a lot of things. But that was just me letting off a bit of, like I said, it's not actually something I would really subscribe to, but it seemed like a good job at the time. Oh, Kanban boards, yeah, this is, actually, Klaus, who knows Klaus Leopold? Yeah, great guy. As in, I've got stuff in there, don't meet your heroes, because I've had that happen a few times where you shouldn't meet the guys you think are. Klaus is lovely. And he's really good. And Klaus appears in my comics. And I've actually used some of his stuff, literally, in my comics. And Klaus actually, he found this pinned up near one of the teams that he had. This comic was actually cut out and pinned up beside the board. And it's one of the basic ideas behind Kanban that so rarely gets implemented, and that's following. And the thing about it is, if you want to get into whip limits, are probably the hardest thing to do in Kanban. I have seen a lot of Kanban boards in my time. We get to the visualization, it does help. We collect the blockers, that does help. 5 minutes. I gotta keep talking for 5 minutes.
5 minutes time boxing.
So,
Because the Agile Drill Sergeant told me.
No worries, there's lunch break afterwards. You have time.
we have time, yeah. Those who want to stay at 12. At 12, we will sing a song. Not before 12.
Okay.
And when the video is turned off. So the thing about whip limits is, okay, and this is, I have so rarely seen it implemented well. I will, if I can, I'll bring in a side of whip limit by limiting the next, or the options, okay? Implicitly, I'll limit, if I can, what's coming into a team, right? I'll see if I can get away with that. But whip limits in the actual columns and stuff like that, in the development columns, you need a lot of management support to get that to work. And they often don't want to rock the boat. Because what you're going to get is, you're going to get a bunch of blockers in here. The developers are going to say, well, we have a whip limit, we can't work anymore. Ideally, we would now go and crush these blockers, but nobody really has the balls to go and do that. So if you want to, one of the things I always talk about is, if you want to set whip limits in, you better have management support behind you, someone who's going to make that happen. Because you're going to run into them. And there's no point having it if you just keep increasing them all the time. You're doing well if you're decreasing your whip limits. So that's something that I would love to see more of, but it's hard to get. A lot of people don't. That's why. So in Kanban, I would say 85% of Kanban systems I've looked at, we're probably just at the visualized work bit, if we're honest. We do some Slido with limiting, but it's really visualized work. Yeah, this was just for fun. We first used the color. I thought some Kanban boards look quite artistic. If you look at them, they're actually, you know, and people can be quite creative when they create their Kanban board. They're like little works of art. Moving works of art, if the work actually moves on the board, which it doesn't always do, obviously, in Kanban. So that was, and that last one, somebody should at least get the reference, oh David. It's the original is oh Jerry or oh Jeff or something like that, but I love Kanban too. But yeah, that was just for the fun of it. It was my first experiment with color. this comes up mostly because I'm from the delivery side of things, or from the external side of things. And one of the things that I hate is because you know, basically, well, we're doing Scrum, aren't we? We've got a Scrum team, it's a team dedicated to this. But normally what happens when you check behind the scenes, this is what's going on. This feeling that just because we say we have a Scrum team, that makes us agile. And I see this all the time, and it's a real problem. We were talking before about feedback. You just don't get, I see so many teams that are not getting feedback. Okay? They are miles away from the customer still. Yeah, they're doing iterations. Yes, they're charting their velocity. Yes, they're getting something done, but they're not getting feedback from the customer whether this is actually what the customer wants or not. And unfortunately, that, in my books, it's no longer agile if you're not getting that. Okay? I'd have a couple of pretty hard questions, I think, if I went into some teams that I'd ask straight away, and then when you're not doing agile, if that's what you think. So that was just, I come across that so often, but we have a Scrum team. And then you look at it in more detail, but they're not really doing it, particularly this, well, we've got a requirements document and we broke it down. And we're working our way through it. I got it. So basically it's static, your backlog, not the definition of backlog. Maybe one last one, because agile transitions are some of my favorite things to be involved in, or not. Yeah, well, you were a successful one, it's different. I've been in a few car crashes. So this is just my take on what I've seen quite often in agile transitions. Okay, the last sentence, and actually this bit here, our customers don't even know we're agile. It actually harks back to Stefan here. Stefan's been doing correct me here if I get anything wrong, but he's been doing it, they've been using SAFe for transition for the last 3 years, roughly. Yeah, but you said after about 2.5 years or something like that, the feedback with the customers started to notice that things were getting better. And I thought, okay, no, this is the good bit, because they had a lot of internal stuff to get through first, but when your customers realize you're agile, they see the benefits, then you're winning, okay? But I've seen a lot of IT departments, and particularly these internal, these IT departments as daughter companies, they're afraid to get the customers involved. You know, we're gonna be agile, but we're not involving our customers because they don't understand that. I think, oh, it's not gonna work. You're optimizing one step in the process, it's not gonna happen, okay? I think that's time's up. So, hey, looks like I have a second one I can do at some point then. Okay, thank you. That was it. I have one last cartoon that has nothing to do with nothing to do at all with the. Hang on. A friend did this to me. And it really, this is also the problem when you go out for beer on a Friday night.
I think I know what this is.
That was like, thanks, Dave. Thanks. He's a Liverpool guy as well. You mean it's not a gay porn movie? No, it's not. So that was okay. The end.
It's on.
Well, there's a guitar.
Yeah, you know I can't play.
I can play, I just can't sing.
Can.
I'm gonna say, you got the words on,
We've got the chords for you. The only thing you need to show the text to the people.
yeah.
No, I wouldn't let us die alone.
Just
Us two.
the refrain.
Well, I don't know if this is.
We need your support because otherwise it will be.
Oh wait, I need to get a connection first.
Ich löse doch mal auf.
Cast,
Vielleicht hier meine Hose.
You can actually play the guitar, right?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, it's just technology you
B
struggle with.
minors in this.
Guest.
Wait, I have a much better idea. Steve, Stefan, come here. He plays the piano.
Okay.
I'm looking at the
Well,
words.
yeah.
By the way, can we find out what key we're in there? Wait, let's go back to the dog voting on the key. Good idea.
Hallelujah, yeah.
So you like to delegate things, right?
Yeah, that's the management guy communicating. So, by the way, that's the easy thing. If you want to find it, it's agiledrillsergeant.com. They're all up there. They're Creative Commons. We haven't tried this. Well, we have tried it, but maybe we've been drunk. Hang on. Is that,
It's which fallen.
yeah, this hasn't been rehearsed, which is not practicing in public is not always the best.
Dann haben wir die Strophen nicht mitgenommen.
I have a sneaking suspicion it's just pretty much.
It's really out of tune.
Ah, okay, we don't have to do it. Oh,
Relax.
you're singing though.
I can talk. Yeah, I can open my mouth. That's not a
This
problem.
was if you want to know whether you should come to Agile Coach Camp or not. This is the kind of thing that happens at Agile Coach Camp. Speak to Veronica and Ralph.
And this is half of our band at the Agile Coach Camp.
The band. Is it close enough for agility? I used to play music in Scotland with some friends of mine, and my friend would always say, it's close enough for folk music, it's okay, just play. They won't notice. I'm nearly there because he's on the high E.
It's in the army now, isn't it? Yeah.
It's actually a bitch to sing.
Okay.
But everyone has to sing together then. Can you give us a few chords? Have you decided how it goes?
Good choice.
A vacation in an agile team. Scrum Master does the best he can. You're in a scrum team now. Whoa, you're in a scrum team now. Now remember what your manager said. Nothing to do all day but code in bed. You're in a scrum team now. Whoa, you're in a scrum team now. You'll be the hero of the development team. Nobody knows that you still can't code. You're in the scrum team now. Whoa, you're in the scrum team now. Smiling faces at the day stand up. But once it's finished, no one gives a damn. You're in the scrum team now. Whoa, you're in the scrum team now. User stories flying over your head. Estimations flying over your head. If you want to think your head, you're in the scrum team now. Whoa, you're in the scrum team now. Service crash in the dead of the night. The BO calls, who wrote this shite? You're in the scrum team now. Whoa, you're in the scrum team now. You're in the scrum team now. Whoa, you're in the scrum team now. You've got your task, so you put up a fight. They're on the scrum board, but it doesn't seem right. You're in the scrum team now. Whoa, you're in the scrum team now. You're in the scrum team now. Whoa, you're in the scrum team now. The sprint is ending and you just can't sleep. Is this illusion or agility? You're in the scrum team now. Whoa, you're in the scrum team now. You're in the scrum team now. Whoa, you're in the scrum team now.
The other advantage of beer is it also tunes everybody's voice to sound better.
Thank you.
And the network is the same.